Welcome to Inside Games Daily, the only gaming news show brave enough to force our editor to fill yet another episode with adult game B-roll because of the censorship.
Yeah, but it makes it fun to watch. You know, it's kind of like watching scrambled porn on cable back in the day. You got to look between all the pixels and see what you can see.
All right, so let's talk about the actual news. Conflicting statements from Valve and Mastercard add to the intrigue and injustice surrounding recent censorship and removal from online storefronts Steam and itch.io.
Yeah, another bout of they said basically, but it's a complicated issue. So let's do a real quick recap just to make sure that we're all up to date here. Steam removed about 20 adult games from its store, while itch.io de-indexed all of its adult content, meaning those games wouldn't show up in search, effectively gone from the store. That happened after pressure from payment processors. Now, payment processors are intermediary companies that act as middlemen between stores like Steam and card networks like Visa and Mastercard. This all went down a couple of weeks ago, and it's been developing ever since.
So, Australian non-profit group Collective Shout actually claimed ownership for these censorship results, announcing that they had conducted a call and email campaign directed to the aforementioned card networks and payment processors.
Yes, so that's basically where we're at. There's a few more ins and outs, of course, but essentially it's looking like a conservative group in Australia successfully leveraged financial institutions to pressure game stores into removing adult content.
All right, so now we're all caught up, and then we can catch up to the actual drama that continues between Valve and MasterCard and Visa and all that stuff. Free speech gamers decided to apply a little pressure themselves. Salute. Resulting in a post on the Mastercard News X account that seeks to clarify their policies on gaming content.
That's right. That sword cuts both ways, and this is actually great to see. I love this civil discourse, but well, some of it's not so civil, but whatever. The post from Mastercard attempts to distance the company from any of these issues. Shocker. Saying that, quote, Mastercard has not evaluated any game or required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms.
Okay, the post claims that the Mastercard network follows the rule of law and nothing more. They said, quote, put simply, we allow all lawful purchases on our network.
Okay, but that's not quite how it went down, at least according to Valve, who responded to a request for a comment from Kotaku shortly after that Mastercard post.
Yeah, Valve said they've never communicated directly with Mastercard, despite Valve's request to talk to them.
Yeah, instead, Mastercard only communicated with payment processors, and then those mysterious and unnamed payment processors then communicated to Valve.
Man, unfortunately, from there, it's just, it already is very opaque, not at all transparent. And it just gets worse. Valve pointed to their policy of only distributing games that are legal for distribution, but apparently the payment processors, not Visa or MasterCard, rejected this, pointing to Mastercard Rule 5.12.7.
Yeah, the plot thickens, right? That rule states, and this is a bit of a wordy one, so buckle up, quote, a merchant must not submit to its acquirer, and a customer must not submit to the interchange system. Any transaction that is illegal or in the sole discretion of the corporation may damage the goodwill of the corporation or reflect negatively on the marks. The marks being like the brand, the little icon, the little two circles. Anyway, the sale of a product or service, including an image which is patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value, such as, by way of example and not limitation, images of non-consensual sexual behavior, sexual exploitation of a minor, non-consensual mutilation of a person or body part, and bestiality, or any other material that the corporation deems unacceptable to sell in connection with a mark.
Lawrence, are you able to translate that?
Porn. Yeah. This is something that's been debated in, the courts forever. What's the difference between art and porn? And most of it is just like, is there artistic merit there, like this says? And that's just down to individual judgment. Although sometimes it ain't hard to see that there's not a whole lot of artistic merit to something.
That's true. All right, so violations of this rule that Lawrence just read can be met with fines, audits, or being cut off from the payment processor entirely, meaning you can't really conduct business anymore, and that's why this scared Steam and itch.io.
Yeah, or alternatively, like we had kind of talked about before, you are forced to use a different payment processor that charges much higher rates in accordance with the legal risk of processing those transactions. So this is getting to be complicated, and part of me thinks this is by design. These systems are in place to inoculate themselves from responsibility, and especially to inoculate themselves from the wrath of an angry populace, which is what they're kind of getting right now.
On both sides. So on one hand, we have Mastercard claiming they will dutifully process all legal transactions, while on the other, Valve is saying that Mastercard hid behind an unnamed payment processor who cited a vaguely worded rule to force the censorship. And the rule is Mastercard's rule, not the payment processor's rule.
The only way they're not lying is if they're corpo lying, right? It's just like they're very strict on the word. We didn't do that. The payment processor did. And they may have cited our rules, but we weren't the ones who did the censorship. They just said that those are our rules and those can be enforced in any way. Well, I don't know. Another kind of fuzzy topic here is honestly relating to Australia. They're pretty strict about classifications, especially about sexual violence towards women. So while these games are kind of on the line with legality when it comes to Australia, but that honestly shouldn't apply to everywhere on the planet. But at the same time, Steam is an international company, and they probably don't want to make a ton of micro exceptions for every individual region, especially when to square themselves with a payment processor, all they have to do is drop 20 so games that most people probably wouldn't know about in the first place if they just disappeared off the store overnight.
Yeah, unfortunately, everybody noticed that. So all those games got dropped, and then people started wondering why, and now we're 2 weeks into the story. So, but it's not all bad news. Itch.io announced that they've begun re-indexing all free adult content and continue to talk with other payment partners to try and reestablish credit card payments for adult material.
Mm-hmm. And in a show of solidarity, this is really cool. Perennial video game homies Good Old Games offered a free bundle of adult games over the weekend at the website freedom2buy.games. Unfortunately, the giveaway window is already over. I just barely missed it. Inside Games would have been so on your side for that one.
GOG announced on X that over 1 million people redeemed that bundle in 24 hours, proving once and for all that free porn is popular. I never would have guessed.
They love it. Who knew? Yeah, I don't know. Those games aren't exactly all winners, nor exactly are all the games that got caught up in this, but it's about the principle. It's not necessarily about preserving games that we'll see in the Smithsonian one day. Or at this rate, shit, maybe they will show up there, given how things are going. But yeah, this is an unfortunate topic, but definitely one that is it's a difficult sign of the maturation of video games as a medium. These discussions used to happen. I remember in the GTA 4 days, the Jack Thompson days. People, even going back to Hillary Clinton and Mortal Kombat, Tipper Gore. Wait, who else was involved in that? Lieberman, I think, they were part of a committee. And that's why we got the ESRB, and ostensibly everything was going how it was supposed to. The industry was regulating itself. So, I don't know. It sucks that it's happening this way. It sucks that it's happening via financial pressure and not necessarily civil discussion. It sucks that the civil discussion has to come after.
That's right. Lawrence, I want to call back to your theory earlier about how MasterCard is just, they're being word salad on purpose because they could be like, oh, we didn't do it. They were the ones that used our rule, because for sure the payment processors and MasterCard are talking behind the scenes. I'm sure there are emails we'll never ever see, but there are emails between those two companies being like, how do we get ourselves out of this without making everybody angry, which kind of hasn't already happened. Everybody's already angry about this. And I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing. That's a great theory. I want to say that's like almost exactly correct. There's no way that MasterCard is just shrugging their shoulders and being like, we didn't do anything. Like, absolutely no way. And I don't, I'm obviously on the side of Valve, but Valve is also another billion-dollar corporation, so I'm not crying for them either. It's one of those things where I do think that I've always liked Valve's approach to business. So I think that they are still making the right moves, and I do believe Valve more than I believe a Mastercard or a payment processor, because those companies are trillion-dollar corporations that I think are preying on people a lot more than Valve does, and I do say that Valve does prey on people. So so it sucks because we got two corporations fighting. I don't trust either of them, but I trust Valve more.
Yeah, I do too. Also, Valve has been. I agree with what you said, Bruce. Even though there are times where Valve's reluctance to involve themselves in any kind of policy setting has been frustrating to me, particularly because they didn't choose the thing I wanted, but I had to at least appreciate that they, the whole way, were designing their system to scale and designing their system to operate without their direct stewardship. But this is a situation where they did have to step in and make a policy choice. And they even added it's funny how similar the wording of the new Steam rule is to the exact rule in Mastercard's thing. So now even Valve has a vaguely worded rule that they can fall back on whenever a payment processor comes knocking and says, take that shit off your store. The only solace I can find in this is that it made it this far without any serious disruption. And the disruption itself is not that bad. However, this is the toehold, right? Even Collective Shout themselves use this as a victory to fuel more aggressive campaigns and to try to get more things taken down. So normally I think slippery slope arguments are a bit... the word... I think people like to jump to where the fight is most interesting, and sometimes that's at the bottom of the slippery slope and not necessarily at the top where people say they are a lot of the times. So everyone acts as though we're at the worst possible scenario before we get there. I think that's a little overdone most of the time, but it's the internet, so people are going to do what they're going to do. However, there's a demonstrated pattern of things like this happening. And if it worked cleanly the first time, there's no reason for them to try it again. Or not to try it again, excuse me. Luckily, people are pushing back. That's pretty much seemingly all we can do. What's frustrating is that it seems like the only result we're going to get is it's a nothing statement. I'm not sure what Mastercard thought this would do, aside from say it's not us. And I guess that's really the only outcome that's desired here. Is go be mad at someone else.
Also, Lawrence, if you read any world news at all, this is sort of part of a disturbing trend that's happening all across the world right now, especially in the UK, with all of the age verification, verifying your identity, all that other stuff. That's also scaring a lot of people. And, whether or not you agree or disagree with it, either way, it's happening to where more things are getting censored according to age verification or payment processors or all it. So there's a trend. And I think that might be also what's making people upset and scared about Valve and Steam and Mastercard, in addition to all their porn sites in the UK and things like that, that now you have to use Gmod to verify your face, right? So we're getting, I understand why basically two sides are rising up, the Collective Shout side and then the free porn side. So it's good that we continue this civil discourse. I really do think that as long as there is two sides to this and not just one side who just gets to do whatever they want, then I think we'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, it is part of a cultural shift, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of edgy gamer bros that think fascism or fascistic government seem like a good idea because they think that government will make all the decisions they want. But they don't have to, and they likely won't. And before long, they'll come for the thing that you like. And you have to kind of swear for the fact that that's what you signed up for or supported at one point. So I don't know. Even though this isn't explicitly related to government yet, this is still just private companies figuring shit out. But I don't know. We live in a world where private companies are big enough; they may as well be governments with the pressure that they can push on people. But still, I don't know. I'm reminded of Stop Killing Games. You probably don't want the government involved in this stuff, even if you think it's going to be to your benefit. I think in this situation, we can even see how a law, a rule, can be vaguely worded enough to be applied in situations that it may not have been intended to, or in ways that are contrary to you thought the rule being applied in the first place. So, be wary. Be wary of what you ask for when you start wanting rules to be applied to things, because it won't always be applied in good faith, and it won't always be applied by people who have your best interest in mind.
That is very, very true. All right, we'd like to thank 3 special patrons. They support our Inside Games Patreon every single month. They spent all weekend playing free porn games just so they could save enough money to support us on Patreon. That was really nice of them to do.
Heroes.
I know, they're really Gooner heroes. Just the Chair, UESC Battleroid, and J Embers 87. Thank you for your heroism. Also, we're joking. Unless you spent the whole weekend masturbating. Maybe you did. I don't know.
Too hot for that, dude. Ugh, it's summer now. What?